Right before we jump into this Nikon D750 user's guide, if you haven't signed up for the FroKnowsPhoto email list, you can do so. Just look for this orange box over on the website, put your name, email address in it, hit send it, and I will send you a free guide to capturing motion in low-light situations. Jared Polin, FroKnowsPhoto.com, and this is the Nikon D750 user's guide, where I'm going to show you all of the buttons, what they actually do, and how I think you should set up the camera, because the menu system is extremely important. But if you're looking for a review of this camera, you can click over here right now to see a real-world review of the Nikon D750. But let's jump into this camera right here. Before we get into talking about how to turn it off and on, you have to make sure that the battery is in. So where's the battery? The battery's down here on the bottom. Boom. You're going to have your battery right here. These batteries last a pretty good long time, so you should get anywhere from 800 to 1,000 or more shots out of it. Now, a lot depends on if you're shooting video or shooting photos. That's something to keep in mind. Always carry a second battery. They're not too expensive. Get a second one, especially when you're traveling, because you never know when you leave one behind or you forget to charge one that you need some power. So how do we put it in here? Well, there's a picture right here. It's not very hard. You slide it in, boom. Boom. Now, yes, some of the things I'm going to say are pretty basic, but we're going to get into the more in-depth menu settings soon. It's good to get an overview of the camera first. I also highly suggest reading the manual. It's not the best thing in the world, but to get familiar with button placement and terminology, it's a good thing to do. So now that the battery's in there, one of the next things we need to talk about are memory cards. Where do they go? Right here, you would put your finger here, slide this way, and then boom. The card holder flips open. You have two SD card slots, a top one and a bottom one. Now you can set it where it can shoot photos to one, video to the other. You can set it where it shoots photos to this one and records the same exact settings to the other. That's how I recommend doing it. I'm a big fan of two cards in the camera at all times, recording the same exact thing, because you never know when something's going to go wrong. But keep in mind, it won't shoot video to both cards. It will only record video to one card and not both at the same time. So close that up. We've got that. Next, you have your on and off switch. Obviously, it's self-explanatory, but boom, you just slide your finger this way, it's on. And then if you go a little further, you can see that the screen lights up a little green. That's good for when you're shooting in the dark or shooting in low light situations. You can hit that button by going like this, and you get the night glow or the interglow right there. Now, this is your shutter button. This is what you're going to press halfway down. I put my finger right here. You can hear I set it to have a shutter beep whenever it's in focus. So that's what you're going to do. When it's in focus, you press it all the way down, and that's how you get a picture. Now, you're going to get used to putting pressure on this. When you hold your finger halfway down, that's how it's going to find focus. And then when you press the button, that's when you're going to get a photo. So we'll talk more about that in the menu system. Right here, you've got your plus minus. This is for setting your exposure compensation, not something you're going to use very often. You've got the red button here, which means record. So that's what you're going to use to start and stop your videos when you're recording. You have your metering mode button. I'll show you about changing metering modes and what each mode does when we get into the menu system. And that takes care of this side of the camera. Actually, one more thing is that this is your top menu. It's where you're going to see your shutter speed, your aperture, you're going to see your ISO setting, how many photos are left, the battery life. There's a lot going on this little screen right here. So let's talk about the lens and putting it on. You're going to see, we're going to start with it off. So we're going to start with it off. You see how you have a white dot here and you have a white dot here. Now, most of the new lenses have a white dot. You simply line up the white dots and then turn towards you, and you hear that click. And that click means that it's locked in and you're ready to go. So that's good for the lens. Let's go to the top of the camera. We have the hot shoe right here. This is where you're going to put a flash, or it's where you're going to put a microphone if you're recording for video. Then moving over to here, we have your top dial. I have it set to manual because I shoot mostly in manual. But some of you, when you get the camera, or actually all of you, are going to see that it's going to be in the auto mode, which is the green mode. To change the dial, you don't force the dial. You press the center and you turn it. You've got your auto. You have your P, S, A, and M. P is program. It's basically auto, but it gives you the ability to change certain things that auto doesn't allow you to do. It also gives you more menu functions, because auto kind of locks up menu functions that they don't want you changing, because auto is meant to just set it and shoot. Now, some of you will want to get out of auto, and I do have a video guide for that, which I'm going to talk about a little later. S is shutter priority. That's where you set the shutter speed, and then the camera's going to go ahead and set the aperture for you. A is aperture priority. That's where you set the aperture, and then the camera is going to set the shutter speed to basically correspond with that. And then manual is where you're setting everything yourself. Now, if you're going to be stuck in auto all the time and you don't want the flash popping up, check it out. If I'm in auto right here and I go like this, I press the shutter halfway down, it's telling me it's too dark. It wants the flash. But if you're inside and there's no flash photography allowed, you then switch over to the no flash photography. It's a lightning symbol crossed out. That means the flash will not pop up no matter what I do. So that's something good to have. U1 and U2, that's where you can set user settings. So you can have certain settings for low light, certain settings for bright light or dark light. And that dark light, I don't know what dark light is. If it's dark light, that means there is no light, so it doesn't even matter. But so you have your U1 and U2. These are very, very good settings. So say you want to shoot portraits, but then you want to switch and have one set for video, well, then you can go ahead and set those, and you're good to go. Scene mode, if you have a camera like this, you do not want to be using any of those scene modes. I can talk more about those later, but that's more of an amateur point and shoot thing. You don't really want to get into that with this. So on the other side of the camera, we've got the lightning bolt. That's to pop up your flash. You also have above the lightning bolt is a lightning bolt with the plus and minus. Just like on the top of the camera for exposure compensation, this is how you're going to change your flash compensation. You actually hold down this button and turn one of the command dials, and that's going to make you change those change those settings. You have a BK button. What's that say? BKT, that's for bracketing. That's for exposure bracketing. We can explain more of that later, but the simple aspect of that is if you hit that button, you can take 3 photos. It's going to do one at this exposure, one at this exposure, and one at that exposure. That's what exposure bracketing is, but I shoot RAW, so I kind of have the ability to change those exposures much easier when I'm shooting RAW. On this side of the camera, we've got the lens release button. You're going to press this to turn and get rid of the lens. Then you have your manual to AF switch. If it's here, it's in manual. If it's here, it's in autofocus. And then there's this button here with a bunch of knipples on it. Yes, knipples is an actual word. You are going to press this and turn the command dials to change your focus modes from autofocus full to continuous to single, and the focus points as well. So how do we do that? You have these command dials. This command dial in the front, I'm going to show the front camera right here, is when you turn your finger like this, that's controlling your aperture. Now on the back, we have another dial. This dial right here is going to control your shutter speed. It's also how you change different functions of the camera, and you'll see that when we get different modes, when we start changing those. But let's look at the back of the camera. AE lock, that's your exposure lock, and then you have your autofocus lock. Really not buttons I use a lot, but there's also another function that if you use this button back here, you can set it so that the camera will autofocus using just that button. We've got your up, up, down, down, left, right, BA, BA, select start button. Obviously it's a joystick, so you can change, get through the menus and move your focusing points in the camera. OK button in the middle. You know what OK does? It usually says OK. It's OK to do something. Info button, that's going to bring up stuff on the screen right here. Then you have your live view button to switch into live view, whether you're in, right now we're in video mode, because that's the video guy, or if you switch over into photo mode. So you have both of those live view options. This is your screen. It can pull out. It can move. This time you can rotate it around. That's new on this type of camera, so get used to that. But also you want to be careful. I'm going to show you up here. Look, you can have it hold it down. It's great for video. You can pull it out. You can turn it this way so you get 90 degrees. You can hold it above your head, or you can just leave it back where it belongs. Menu button, that's how you get into your menus. You've got your question mark and then the lock with the white balance. So basically the buttons with the information on it, that's the main function. Then there's a secondary function that can also work, and that's the WB, or in this instance the quality with the magnifying glass, or ISO with the other magnifying glass, and then the info button. We'll get into those when we get into the camera. And then on this side of the camera we have, I can't see it in this light, you can put a remote in here. You have a headphone jack, as well as a, what is that one? Oh, you have your headphone and then your mic in, and then you have your HDMI right here and your mini or micro USB, I think that's mini USB, and then like we said, that's the HDMI. One other thing I didn't tell you about on the top of the camera is you have another dial, and that's set right now to single frame. This is your continuous shooting modes. This would give you one picture every time you press the button. Now when you press and rotate the button here, we've got continuous low. That means you can set that to, say, 2 frames, 3 frames a second, 4 frames a second, up to, I think it's 5 frames on that one. But then continuous high, you can set that to the highest frames per second that this camera allows you to do. Then we've got the quiet mode. Then we have, there's quiet mode and quiet mode continuous. So it will shoot slower, but it's going to shoot continuously just quiet. Not super quiet, but quiet. And then when we rotate one more time, it's hard to do it from this angle, so I'm going to rotate it here. We've got the timer. And then we have the M up. That's mirror up. That's for you locking up the mirror. That's for long exposures and everything along those lines. A couple of other things on this camera. You have this little hazy thing here. That's for a remote, a wireless remote. You also have a microphone hole there and a microphone hole here. That's for getting your audio. And on the bottom, you have your tripod thread. And also right here is if you had a vertical grip, this rubber piece comes out. You put your vertical grip there, and you're good to go. So that is a rundown of what the buttons do. Now I want to run through the functions of the camera, setting it up for the menu system, and showing you what each one of those buttons actually does when you press it. So if you're new to photography or just new to this camera and you're looking to get out of auto or just take better pictures and understand the exposure triangle even better, I have a guide for that. It's a FroKnowsPhoto guide to getting out of auto. You can click up on the screen right over here. That's going to take you to a preview of the guide, but it's 3 hours of learning where you get to follow me on actual real-world photo shoots using basic cameras much less quality than this, and lenses that aren't so awesome, but still getting great quality results. I think you're going to like it. Go ahead, check it out. If you want to get out of auto or you want to get better results, that's going to fast track you to doing it, so go ahead and check it out. So now let's get into the menu system. I'm going to run you through how I would set up the camera. Now you don't have to do it exactly like I do. It's just a recommendation for a starting point. Now something to keep in mind here is that on the camera they have a question mark. So if you're in the menu system and you're ever not sure what you're looking at or what something actually means, go ahead and hold down that question mark. For example, I can't do it there. I can do it right here. It's going to tell me exactly what that means. Now what's going on here is you have the user's manual basically built in here, which is a great thing to have because you can read up on definitions and get a better understanding of something if you don't know it. So right now we're in the playback menu. That's the diamond-shaped play button here. Delete, that means that you will be able to delete selected images, a select date, or all. I wouldn't get into deleting any images from the camera. I'm all about reformatting the card every single time you start new. That means that you're basically telling the card and the camera to talk together in the cleanest format with nothing on it. Now you want to make sure that if you have photos on it from before, that they're backed up and saved somewhere else. So then you've got your playback folder. Not something to worry about. I leave it just basically where it's set. Playback display options. This is important. You can have your focus point show up. You can have it where none and just the image only. Actually, I can pop in here to show you a photo. That didn't hurt anything, did it? I can show you that you can see the red dot in the middle. If I hit up, you can see that this is with no information. We can see now this is with information like the histogram and all my settings, the time of day, was it shot in RAW. Hit up again, you can see other menus and more menus and the color histogram. You have all those different options that you can do right there. Those are the playbacks. I like to have most of them set. Really, I don't need the RGB histogram, so I go ahead and I hit to the right, and then I hit the OK button when I'm ready, and gone, and that means that it won't be selected the next time I get back in there. It's simple to move around the menu. Just use the up-down arrows. It's very simple to do. So now we've got we don't copy images because I only have one card in the camera. Image review I have off. This is something that when you take a picture, the image pops up on the screen. I don't like doing that. The reason I don't like doing that is if I'm shooting in a lower light situation and I take a picture and then the bright ass screen turns on, it kind of makes it harder for me to see through the camera, so I don't have image playback on. One thing I didn't talk about with the buttons, if you want to play an image back, you hit this button right up here to play it, or you hit this, well, to play, and then if you want to ever delete, you would go ahead and hit the delete twice. Like I said, I'm not a fan of deleting pictures in the camera. Worry about that later when you're on the computer, because this is a small screen. You don't want to delete something by accident. After delete, I don't even worry about that. Rotate tall, we've got off. Actually, what does this mean again? Because I always confuse this one. If on is selected, image is taken with on select from auto image rotation in the setup menu. It will be rotated for display during playback. Images are not rotated for, yeah, I don't want the images rotating for when I shoot verticals, because what happens is it rotates it vertically on a small screen that is horizontal, and I rather turn the camera vertically to see that whole picture, to get the whole screen. Slideshow, nothing to worry about there. Let's get into photo shooting menu. This is where we get into actually setting stuff up. Storage folder 101, leave it set to where it is. File naming, I switch it. It starts in DSP, is I believe or DSC is what it's normally set to. I set it myself using sRGB. And I go ahead and set JPA, and what happens is after 9,999 photos, when it resets back to 0, I go ahead and change that to JPB. Or you could do JP1, JP2, whatever you want to do, come up with a system for yourself. Role played by card number 2 is very important. You can have it set to overflow, meaning once you fill up card 1, it overflows to card 2. You can have it do a backup, which is what I recommend, where it takes the same pictures that are on card 1, as soon as you take them, get backed up to card 2. But remember, videos only will save to one card. And then you could have RAW to slot 1, and JPEG to slot 2. That's a nice option for people that shoot for newspapers or magazines that still want the JPEGs, but it's really important to have the RAW files. Image quality is super important to think about. Your options, you've got Nikon. NEF means RAW. That's Nikon electronic format, or RAW, which is I shoot RAW. You can shoot RAW plus JPEG fine. That's going to chew up the most memory of your card because that's a fine JPEG and a high-res RAW file. You can set it to RAW plus normal, RAW plus basic, or just RAW itself. I'm a big proponent of shooting RAW. I'll just quickly go into that if you don't know what RAW is. Think about baking a cake. If you have the raw ingredients and you burn a cake, you can't go back once you cook it. You can't go back unless you have the raw ingredients again. A JPEG is a cooked file. That means it's taking data, throwing it away, and giving you what the camera thinks the best picture should look like, or what the picture should look like. The camera's making the decisions instead of you. I think you can make a better decision. That's why I shoot RAW. I think RAW is the way to go. But remember, every RAW file has to be tweaked at the computer. You're going to see the raw data, meaning it's unedited. You have to go ahead and edit it. When you're first starting out, I'm a big fan of doing RAW plus JPEG basic. No reason to shoot the fine. Use the basic JPEGs as a starting point to help you try to match the color. But once you get really good at editing your RAW files, say in Adobe Lightroom, which is what I use, you're going to really know that you make better decisions than the camera. So I leave it set to RAW myself all the time. Let me set it to JPEG real quick because there's another setting you can do here if you're doing JPEG. You've got image large. If you're going to shoot in the highest format quality that you can. Especially if you're not going to shoot RAW, make sure you shoot in JPEG large. Image, but I'm going to change it back to RAW because I don't want to forget that. That's one thing I don't want to forget. Image area. You can shoot in FX. You can shoot, FX is full frame, meaning taking advantage of the full frame here, the full frame, the 35mm sensor. You can do in 1.2 crop mode. You could also do 1.5 crop mode, which is DX. Or you could put DX lenses on this body, which will allow you to shoot them in their native 1.5 crop mode. Now, I'm a big fan of staying in in FX mode. You don't really gain anything when you're shooting in the crop modes other than it's basically cropping the picture to make it seem like you got closer, but you didn't. You could do that later if you really want. I'm a fan of having all of the data versus getting rid of some of the data. So we got that. Auto crop mode means, auto DX crop means if you put in a DX lens on here, it's going to automatically detect that and switch it into 1.5 mode. JPEG compression, I have optimal quality. Size priority is going to keep it the same size no matter what. All images are compressed to around the same file size. I don't want that, especially if I'm shooting JPEG. I want it to be this. Priority is given to image quality. File sizes may differ. That's what I would do. So that gets rid of that menu. Now we get into the movie shooting menu. File naming, same thing. Destination, you can tell where to go. And if you want to see how much time you have left on the card, it tells you right here that you have 2 hours and 46 minutes and 11 seconds left on a 32 gigabyte card. Now, for shooting videos, you want to make sure you have a faster card, like one of the U10s. The faster transfer rates, I use the SanDisk Extreme Pro 32 gig cards that I picked up for about $40 online. Not a bad price for 32 gigs, and especially when you're going to get 2 hours, 46 minutes, 11 seconds. Now, the more pictures you take, the less video you're going to be able to get, and the more video that you take, the less pictures you're going to get, because it's all about that data. So that's destination. Frame rate sizes. You have all these different options from 1920 by 1080 at 60 frames a second. That's how many frames a second the camera's it's shooting at faster frame rate. You've got that at 60, 50, 30, 25, 24. 24 is the cinematic look. That's what movies are shot in. They're shot in 24 frames a second. Also remember, if you're going to shoot in the higher quality 60 frames, that means there's more frames a second going into the camera, meaning you're capturing more data, and you won't get as much record time at 1080 at 60 frames as you will at 24 frames. You've got 720 mode, 720, all the way down to just much less. Actually, it only goes down to 720. I guess it doesn't do the really crappy resolution anymore. So I'm a fan of staying in 1080. You can always, it's just like when you're shooting RAW. You can always dumb down the higher quality, but you can never start in a lower quality and boost it up to get back to what you hope that you had. Movie quality, I definitely shoot in high versus normal. Microphone sensitivity, this is something that you would go in here and switch yourself once you get more familiar with how to shoot and understand audio as it pertains to video. I do have a guide for that. That's the FroKnowsPhoto Guide to DSLR Video. That explains everything you need to know if you're looking to shoot video. If you picked up this camera to shoot video, you may want to check out that DSLR Video Guide because for video, because it's a 6-hour comprehensive guide that's going to show you everything you need to know about using this camera for shooting video. So we've got that. I don't recommend setting it in auto modes. You'll learn that manual is much better. Frequency response I leave on wide, and then wind reduction, or what's it? Does it say wind? It said wind noise reduction I leave off. Image area, FX, full frame, that's where I leave it. White balance, set your picture controls. Picture controls are important we'll go in there real quick. Standard, neutral, vivid, monochrome, portrait. If I hit question mark, will it show me examples? Nope, it just tells me what they do. You can change these. Remember, when you're shooting video, whatever your picture controls are in your camera, that's what your video is going to look like. So if you shoot it in monochrome, that means your video is going to come out in monochrome. You can never get the color back. So keep that in mind when you're doing that. Manage picture controls, high ISO noise reduction, I leave that on normal. Movie ISO sensitivity, you have different options here. You can even turn on the auto ISO function for video, which is an amazing mode, and I think I talk about that in the review when I do the review. So let's move out of the movie shooting menu and get into custom setting menu. This is where you're going to find the custom settings for your camera. Now, if you're in the auto mode, you probably won't see all of the functions I've been talking about, so you have to make sure that you're out of the auto mode to get access to stuff like this. So here we have the menu system, autofocus. Let's get into that. AFC priority selector. Let's read that real quick. Choose the operation performed when the shutter release button is pressed. Release. The shutter can be released even when the camera's not in focus. I have it set to release because sometimes it's in focus, but the camera doesn't think it is, and that's why I do that. So I leave that to that. AFS priority select, on the other hand, is I leave that to focus. That means when I'm locked in single focus mode, that means if I press my finger halfway down on the button and it locks in, as long as I don't take my finger off the button, it's going to stay locked where it's at. If it's not locked, it won't take a picture. Focus tracking, I leave that on the normal. Focus point illuminator, I have on. Dynamic area display on, and group area illumination, I also have set to the big boxes. I don't like it set to the little boxes. Yep, on versus off. AF Point Illumination on. I don't like it on auto. That means the red lights on the inside. This is something that the Nikon offers that Canon doesn't, where the red lights will stay on all the time in the inside of the camera when your focus points are going to stay on all the time when the meter is active. Focus point wrap, that is on. That means that the focus points are going to, if you hit up, up, and up, that means the focus points are going to go from the top one back down to the bottom one, and vice versa, left to right. It means you can move it all around the camera. AF point, number of focus points. I leave it to 51. If you have, that means you could select through 51 points. If you had it only set to 11, that means you could only fit or select 11 different points. Store point orientation I have set to off. ISO sensitivity level value I have set to 1/3 stops. Same thing here. Easy exposure compensation's off. Matrix metering, I have that on. Oh, that's face detect. Yeah, that's not really something I get too worried about. Then my center weighted I have set to 8 millimeters. So center weighted area is just the center area of focus. Sorry, for getting your meter. Fine-tune optimum exposure, I have that. I'm not even in that right now. I'm not going to talk about every single function here. You can read about each one in the camera and also test them out yourself. I'm just going through the basic ones. Standby timer, I have it set to 10 minutes right now because that we don't want the camera turning off when I'm using, we're recording to a device over here that we don't want it to turn off. I leave standby timer to maybe 10 seconds. Because that's going to save battery power. If I'm not looking through the camera, it's not active, it's going to turn off and save itself power. It's not going to turn off the actual camera, it's going to turn off the metering, because when the meter is on, it's using battery power. Self-timer, 10 seconds. This is a cool thing. If you set it up on a tripod and you want it to say set for 10 seconds, you leave it set to 10 seconds. But if you wanted to do a number of shots, you could set it to 1 to 9 shots, meaning it's going to take 9 shots in a row, which is a good thing to have if you have a party going on, because you can get, because you could set the intervals from a half a second to a second, meaning you can have it set to 9 frames and take one every 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, or a half a second. That's a great option to have. Monitor off delay, we have it set to 20 seconds. You're going to find ones that work best for you for this setting. Remote duration, 1 minute. Beep. As you heard when I focused, I like to have my beep on. Beep is going to be on. You can hear what it sounds like. You have 3 volumes for beep. It's only on when you're in single focus. What it does is it allows you to, when you lock your focus in, it's going to beep and tell me that, yes, you're in focus, you're good to go. Now, if you're in a loud area, it's not going to bother people. But if you're shooting, say, a wedding, it may become a bother to people. I would either turn it off or lower it to the lowest setting. Now, the pitch could be high or low. I actually like the higher pitch. I can hear it in the pit during a concert for some reason because it's a higher pitch. It goes through my, my headphones or my in-ears. Continuous low speed we talked about earlier. You can set low from 1 to 6. That means in continuous low you'd get 1 to 6 frames a second. Max continuous release in a row, 100 frames. Exposure delay, that's off. File numbered sequence is on. I always want it to be on. If it's off, that means it's going to be every time you put a new card in the camera, it's going to start at 0 again, and I want it to continually go up so I don't have overlap. Viewfinder grid display I have off. You could also put that on. That helps you get your lines and levels straight. Easy ISO, I don't even know what that means. If on is selected, ISO sensitivity can be adjusted by rotating a command. I don't know what that means. I don't use that. Information display, I have that set to auto, LCD illumination, I have that off. Batteries, battery order, you can set it if you had a vertical grip to say what to happen, which battery to use first. Anything else important in here? Not really. OK button. This is interesting. When I have the playback menu set, I set it to zoom in. This is F1, the OK button. I like to be able to go into my picture and then hit the center OK button like this and have it zoom in. That is a great way that I can check focus really darn quick. So that's one of the important settings that I use is that center button for when I'm shooting in my playback menu. Assign function button, you can assign the function buttons, basically self-explanatory when you get in there. Release button, off. Slot empty, yes. If you have no card in the camera, I don't want you to be able to take a picture. There's no reason that you should be able to take a picture when no card's in the camera, because you don't want to make that mistake of shooting pictures without a card in the camera. So that is why I leave that on lock. Reverse indicators, don't mess with that. I leave that the way it is. And then all these other things are easy to navigate. Now we're in the wrench menu, setup menu, flicker reduction, auto. Make sure you set your time and date. This is definitely important to set. Make sure you get that set to your location as well. The language, you can change it to a different language. If you want to try to get into your camera or do whatever language you read, you can do that. Auto image rotation. Now this isn't going to rotate it on the screen here, but on the computer, it's going to rotate your verticals so that they're not horizontal and you have to change them all later. That's something that I leave on. Battery information. You can see the battery level. You have 85% left. Number of shots, I've taken 13. The battery life, this is a new battery, so it's on 0, so that's good. That's definitely important to have. Image comment, I have off. Copyright, I have off. Actually, in all my cameras, I set that. I set up my image comment to attach my name and the copyright information, my phone number, my email address, so that I can be notified if somebody finds that picture and they want to purchase it. Save load settings. If you have two of the same cameras, you can set up one, save the settings to it, put it in the other camera, and then load those settings and get the same exact setup. Now, if you have two cameras, I would make one camera A and one camera, say, Z, so that they're not giving you the same file names, so they're not going to try to overlap or say that you've already imported them before. Virtual horizon, you can see it's like Star Wars. You must use the Force, and you must try to fly into the Death Star and blow it up. I have it lined up green. If I get it to green, I can blow it up. I failed. I died. Darth Vader got me. But anyway, so that's a virtual horizon. That's good to use. Fine-tune HDMI location data, all that stuff. Firmware version. Retouch menu is if you want to retouch your photos in the camera. Don't recommend doing that. But my menu is really important. You can see this is where you can set up to add your own functions to this menu, the ones that you use the most. I use battery, frame rate, microphone, choose image area. These are what I use, and I set it up. It's really easy to add an item. You can do that simply by adding an item each time. So that is a quick, no, that is a long rundown of the menu system, and that's a quick overview because I blew through it pretty quick, but it's important to play with the functions, read up on them, see what they do, but that's how I set up the camera myself, and now it's up to you to see how you want to set it up. So what are we going to move into next? I believe we're going to move into showing you what the functions of each of these buttons do, and we're going to take a quick second and be right back. So now that we've gone through the function settings and set up our camera with all the menus, I want to show you what the buttons do on the back and show you the info screen and how you can basically access everything from outside the camera without having to go into the menu system. Now you're seeing that it's blinking from dark to light. You can change that to set it so that it's either going to say always bright or always dark. Now it's going to change depending on the setting that you're in if you leave it on auto, and that's why it's blinking right here. One of the things I didn't show you is that if you turn this back dial here, we see how the shutter speed changes. That's what this back dial is doing with your thumb. It's changing the shutter speed. Now the front one, which is right here, that's going to change your aperture. So those are things that obviously you can change on the outside. So on the back of the screen here, you've got, you know that you're in FX mode. Your timer is set to 10 seconds. You've got, we're in standard picture control. Our white balance is set to auto, we're not on auto, but if we want to change that, we would hit this button right here, white balance, hold it down, and I rotate the back button. You can see that that's white balance for flash, that's white balance for sun. Let's see, let's just get into auto for the time being. Where is auto? Auto, there it is, there's auto. And you can change, there's so many different options that you can change here. Get used to your white balance. White balance is very important when you're shooting video, but when you're shooting in RAW format, know that picture control, picture style, is not affecting your RAW file, and neither is the white balance. That's something that you can tweak later in the RAW file. So we've got that. We can change the quality from the outside. Again, I have it set to RAW. but you can rotate the back to see what's going to happen. It tells you how many pictures you could get. If we're in basic large, we'd get 5.2 thousand pictures on this memory card. Now, I'm going to go ahead and leave it set to RAW, and I'm going to get 585 right now, which is really important. Well, that's still a lot of photos even in RAW. ISO. You can change your now it's ISO, International Standardization Organization. So it's I period, S period, O period. It's not ISO, it's ISO. So just wanted to get that out of the way. You can change your ISO right here. You can also then you see these rotational things? That one, left to right, means that's the back button for rotating, and this one right here means that's the front one. You can see that would be auto ISO. You can change, but that's what I want to keep off. But it's really good to be able to change your ISO from the back here. You also have that on the top of the camera that you can change your ISO. You can see it changing right there on the top. So that's that. What other function modes do we have to show you? I'm not going to get into the play menu right now because I don't want to turn off this other device, but if we click on the side here, this is really important. The AF button, you would press the AF button. Now right now we're in single. If I rotate the back dial, there's AFA. Now that AFA is basically an autofocus mode. It's going to select between whether it thinks you should be shooting continuous or single. I'm a fan of picking what you should be shooting, which is if you're an AFS, that's single, that's more for portraits, for objects that aren't moving, and then continuous is exactly what it means. It's for subjects that are moving. You're going to continuously follow them. So now while the button is still pressed, you can see that's continuous and that's single, but back into continuous AF here, you have 9-point. So these are different functions that you want to read up on. You have 9-point AF. You've got 21-point AF, you have 51-point AF, you have 3D AF, which is going to automatically jump around and try to pick the setting, the right focus point for you. And then you have group area. Group area is really good to use if you're shooting sports and everything like that. So what's going on here is, say if we're in dynamic 9 and you're focused in on something as it moves from left to right through the image, the focus is going to jump from point to point to point because the camera's smart enough to know that it wants to focus track that subject. So that's where you can change that type of thing. That's really important to do. I don't know, that's kind of it's really easy with these buttons to see exactly what you need to change. Now I'm going to get into let me get into the picture mode here. That should continue getting everything going. Why did I want to get into the picture mode? Oh, I wanted to zoom in. Show you that when I hit the center OK button, we set this earlier, you zoom in and then you can move around, or we can hit zoom out. We hit this button with the checkerboard on it. Watch what's going to happen when we zoom all the way out. It's going to show me the pictures that are on there. Right now there's only 2 pictures, but then I zoom back in, or I could zoom in on the other one. Yes, these are great pictures of my lights, obviously just sample shots, but you can zoom in and see what's going on right there. So that takes us out of that, and hopefully, well, yep, that's going to reset the camera. So I'm going to stop right there before we basically get ready to wrap this up. So let's come right back. So now let's jump into the video modes, the live view for shooting video. I'm not going to jump into the live view for shooting photos because that's not something that I do much of, but I just want to show you the overview of what you're going to look at when you see the live view of the camera for shooting video. So now we're looking at the back of the camera. We can see the floor is here, and we can see all of the settings that we have, but you can change the info. There's an info button right here. You can hit the info, and it's going to change what shows up on the screen, but all this is in live time, in real time. I say live time, but real time. Look, you even have a live, what do they call this thing? They call this the leveler thing, virtual horizon. But it's even more fun when you're doing it in video because you can see what you're doing. You can like fly it around. But anyway, that's that. So let's get out of that, hit info. But look, you have all of your main functions right here on the screen. You can see your shutter speed. I can change it, and you're watching the shutter speed change in live view. Now there's a reason you'd want to set it to 1/50th of a second. Again, I talk about all of that in the FroKnowsPhoto Guide to DSLR Video. You can change your aperture right here in real time. Some of the other Nikon cameras, like the Nikon D610, don't allow you to change the aperture while you're in live view or while you're recording, but this camera does. Do you see how it's dark over here right now? And actually, I use that to focus. but I want to change the ISO. So I hit the ISO button here. I want it to go to that smooth ISO, the auto ISO right here, and watch what happens. You see how everything's going to be exposed better no matter where I point it. You can see the ISO jumping around. It says 2500 back there. It says 3200 right here. If I point it at the light, it's going to get much lower. See that? And it's automatic. Oh, look at it smoothly change. See, we'll go from here back to here. Do you see how it's not stutter stepping? That's really important to have. You also see that the audio levels over here, I'm not peaking, which is a good thing. You don't want it to be red. Red. I can't even get up. There's a red. You don't want it to be in red. Red is bad. So you can change to your 1080 to 60 frames. I can't change that right now because we're recording. That would throw off the camera. But you can change your focus modes. You can see the different options. There's ones like there's a face where it's going to track. I'm not a big fan of this autofocus for video. It's not the best, so you're going to manually focus most of that stuff. And really, oh, check it out. Picture control. Where are my picture controls? I'm going to, oh, white balance. You can change your white balance right back here and watch everything change. You can see that. And right now I have follow focus on. I can hear it and feel it moving. But it's following. See how it's going to focus on the background? Actually, it's not even finding a face, but whatever. Picture styles. Where's that picture style button on here? Oh, I have to hit the I. Thanks, Steven. Forgot where it is. Oh, yes, when you hit the info button, you have all of the different movie settings, the important things for you. So here we have standard. Then we would go to neutral, vivid, monochrome, portrait, landscape, flat, which is what a lot of video people are going to shoot if they're going to go ahead and edit later. But I set it to standard, and I set it the way that I want to set it, and other people set it different ways. I actually want to change this focus back to single because it's focusing while we're talking. So this info button is really important because you can get to everything really quick. It's not like that in some of the older Nikons. Even my D4S doesn't have something as simple as moving around to this. You have your headphone controls. You have all of these different options, and so that really is that for video. You can see your 20 minutes. That's what you want to have. You can see that it's going to one card at 20 minutes. If we were to switch this to 1080 at 60 frames a second, you'll only get 10 minutes of record time. The Canons on the other side, they do the same thing where it cuts down, but in their regular shooting mode, it will do 29 minutes and 59 seconds. The Nikons will max out at 20 minutes unless you're using something like we're connected to right now. The Atomos will give us infinite record time if we have enough battery and enough storage on that bad boy right there. So that is the video, just a walkthrough of the video live view, and that is where we're going to end it. So there you guys have it. That is the user's guide for the Nikon D750. Like I said, it's an overview. My goal with making this video is to give you a starting point so that you're not stuck when you just buy your camera reading the manual going, this doesn't make any sense, I don't get how it works. That's what I like to do. I'm all about showing you how things work practically, showing you how it's done so that you can understand it, because a lot of us are visual learners. So that's how I make a lot of my videos, and you should subscribe here on YouTube if you want to check out the latest videos as they go live. But if you want to see any of my 1800 videos, you can go ahead and search on my YouTube channel or over on FroKnowsPhoto.com to see what videos you may have missed, because there are a lot of them. Don't forget to sign up for the FroKnowsPhoto email list, which you can do so over here. Click on the screen, takes you over to the website, look for the orange box, put your name, email address in it, and I will send you a free guide to capturing motion in low light situations, as well as other helpful tips over the first few weeks of being on the email list. Those get sent to you, and it's really some solid free information that you're going to get from me. So that's it, guys. That's your user's guide. I hope you enjoyed this camera, and that's where we'll leave it. Jared Polin, FroKnowsPhoto.com. See ya.